But just as a person who's an artist that makes my living from my art, speaking for other artists, please don't support that. You're listening to the Creative Faith and Friends podcast, episode number 11.
Oh, I got you. There's no reason to chasing payment on my own, 'cause you're here to stay every night and day. I'm delighted 'cause I got you. La, 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 la.
Well, hello and welcome to Creative Faith and Friends. My name is Melissa Ohlson and I am here with my two co-hosts, Lauri. Hi, Lauri.
Hi, Mel.
And Jessica. Hi, Jess.
Hey, y'all.
And we are so excited because we are going to talk about die cutting and die cut machines today. But first, we have some happy mail. So today is my turn to read some happy mail, and I have one that is actually from someone who I'm friends with online. We've sent each other presents and we chat in email, and she has actually left several comments. She's an awesome lady. Her name is Abby, and she is at Birdie Blessings on Instagram, and she has a website called Little Birdie Blessings, and I will link these in the show notes because her website is really cool. She's got all kinds of free printables, and she creates scripture verse printables that are beautiful, vintage. So you'll definitely have to go check that out if you haven't seen her before.
Oh, yay, Abby.
Yes, we love Abby. And so she left us this on iTunes, and it says, "Thanks, ladies, for keeping it real, from the tears to the laughter and everything in between. Love the story of how God brought the three of you together to form Creative Faith and Friends. The show notes with links are so fun to explore, and the stack and staple idea is fabulous, of course. A pile of scraps transformed into something beautiful in seconds. Keep on keeping on and encouraging in this unique way. Praying for you, Abby." So thank you so much, Abby. I think I don't remember what episode that was from. I should have researched this a little.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but that's so awesome.
I love
Yeah.
that.
What a sweet lady.
Stack and staple. You know what? I'll figure it out and I'll put it in the show notes in case you want to listen to that episode where we talked about how we met. It was kind of a little bit of a sappy episode, but it was fun.
Yes.
So thank you. And if you would like us to read your message during our Happy Mail segment, just leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, or you can leave a comment on our blog at pinkpaperpeppermints.com/podcast. You can go there. You can see all the show notes from the different episodes. You can listen to episodes and you can chat with us in the comments. We would love that.
Melissa, I have
Yes.
a little bit of a bone to pick. So
No.
I was looking at the blog today, and
Yeah.
there's my picture is there with a big arrow pointed to me that says she can't stop buying supplies. And I'm just saying that y'all can't either. So I just want to set the record straight.
Whatever.
It's also you two.
Now, in fairness, I made that after we made our intro episode, the 000 episode, and I just picked one fact from each of us that we had talked about in that episode.
I love it.
That was your thing that you talked about, was you couldn't stop buying supplies. So I guess I could add that to both of us, all three of us.
I just think I got a good tickle out of it. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, Melissa, you need to pick a bone with her that this is just coming up, and she was supposed to prove that like 11 episodes ago.
Now that is entirely true. It just dawned on me today, and I was like, I'm going to say something about that because I think it's kind of funny.
It is funny. I know.
Anyway, sorry.
But that is why I picked a fact about each one of us.
Yes,
But
absolutely.
That fact is definitely true about all three of us. So, okay, well, let's start talking about die cuts. We wanted to talk about, first of all, the different types of die cutting machines. So if you don't have one, or if you only have one kind, you might not know all the different kinds there are. So the first kind is, I guess you would just call it a manual machine, where you kind of hand crank the dies through. And I think that is the sturdiest one. That's the first one that I got. And it's a Sizzix Big Kick. And the dies, you can get them really chunky and thick. They look like, I don't know, little flat bricks or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're about an inch thick. And so because of that, you can actually cut thicker things like cardboard and chipboard and stuff. But it will also cut the thinner dies. Mm-hmm. There's little thin metal dies too. I don't know all the names of all these things. I probably should have done some research on that.
I think different companies call them different things.
That's
and
true.
Some companies call them thinlets.
Yeah.
That's the name that I would know them by, but I don't think all companies actually call them that.
Yeah. I would say most of the dyes out there these days are the real thin ones that are almost flat. So.
Yeah. They don't make the big, thick, chunky ones as much.
Yeah.
But I like those because you can cut thicker things with them, which I'm going to talk about later, some of the things that I like to cut. But so I have a Sizzix Big Kick. I know there's an Impress by Spellbinders is another really big seller that a lot of people like. I've actually been thinking about switching to that one because my Big Kick is getting so old. You know, when something that has plastic on it starts to get so old that the plastic starts to deteriorate.
Yeah.
Then
it might be time.
It's really old.
Might be time.
But it still works fine. It just doesn't look very good. So.
Well, save your $100 and get you something else.
Yeah, right? $100 worth of dyes. So that's the manual one. So basically you just put the dye in, you layer it up in what they call a sandwich, which is basically you have like a cutting plate and then your dye and then your paper and then another plate on top of that. And you run it through and kind of crank it through by hand. And then they have an electric version of that where you don't have to crank it. It's the same style where it has the big chunky dyes can go through it, but you just push a button. It's got an electric button. And I think Tim Holtz has
the Vagabond.
The Vagabond, that's right. And then is there another electric one? The Gemini, maybe?
The Gemini, yeah. But I have the Gemini, and I didn't realize at first it doesn't cut those big fat ones. At least there's nothing that says it does. I don't know that I've tried it, but I don't think that it does. It does. I don't remember if I tried putting something in there or not, but I don't think it does. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but it still works really well.
Wow, I didn't know that. So if you want to cut the big, thicker ones, you have to have the Tim Holtz Vagabond.
Yeah, or there might be others. I don't know.
There are. I know. I have actually my mom's. I borrowed and haven't given it back. Her Cuddle Bug.
Sorry, Mom.
Yeah, right. Sorry, not sorry. It will cut, the Cuddle Bug will cut the big, thick dyes also.
Okay. And is it an electric one?
It is not. No, it's a manual crank.
Now, do they still make the Cuttlebug? I thought they didn't.
Probably not. It's probably kind of vintage at this point. No, it's not vintage, but I mean, it's, probably 5 years old at least.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Actually, I have remember those little mini Cuttlebugs that cut just the little tiny flat dies? I actually have one of those too. I don't know where it is. But.
It's like Jess, what's the little one that you have?
I have the Tim Holtz Sidekick. The little,
Sidekick,
it's like 2-inch.
Yeah, there was a Cuttlebug version of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that I got.
I've been trying to decide if I need one. What do you think?
No.
Oh, dear.
Wait a second. I said you do.
I know. Well, I just never used that one because you can put those small dies in the big machine.
Right.
See, I use that one a lot because I can pull it out so quickly.
Oh, I see.
And speaking of using and not using, I have a Big Shot and a Gemini. And y'all, I always go back to my Big Shot. It's just
me too.
The Gemini has a bigger platform, but I just don't tend to cut that much of something at one time.
Right.
And so, there is a Gemini Junior that's smaller, probably more the size of the Big Shot, but I didn't get that one. And I'm like, I just put it away. I don't know what to do with it because
sell it and buy more dies.
Well, that's a good point. Yes, I could do that.
So then the third kind of machine is a digital machine, and that's going to be your Silhouette. Cricut makes a digital machine. Brother makes a digital. Who else? Is there another one that I'm not thinking of?
Jess, what do you have?
I have the Cricut.
You have the Cricut. So the digital machines, Lauri, do you have a digital machine?
I do. I have a Silhouette.
They use computer files to do the cutting. So it's kind of neat because you can really design your own things and you can meld different dyes together, which of course you can't do with metal. And you can just do a lot of designing that you can't do with a manual one. But the downside is because of the nature of the machine, you can't put anything very thick in it. It's mostly works the best on paper. Now they have different things like they have felt and fabric and different things, but I've tried some of their specialty stuff and I have not had good success with it. So I don't know. You take that for what it's worth, but I still use my digital machine. I've been using it to cut out the stickers from my prayer journal kits.
Yep.
Those come with the cut files now, and I really love that. I
Yes.
love cutting those out and not having to fussy cut all those stickers.
Oh, I'm still fussy cutting over here. I
know.
love me some fussy cutting.
You love fussy cutting.
Oh, I
So
love
those
it.
are the 3 main types of machines. What is your favorites, each one of y'all? What do you think is your go-to? You kind of already said, Laura, you
Yeah,
like
mine's a
to
Big
go
Shot
back
for sure.
to your Big Shot. What about
Mhm.
you, Jess?
Oh man, that's hard. I don't play favorites. So
Such a teacher answer.
Yeah.
it's really hard to say because it depends on the situation.
That's true.
Now, with my Cricut, I don't pull it out a ton. I do with your stickers, but there are things I make that I can't make with the manual die cut machines. And
Mhm.
that's when I pull that out and I use it. And I use that for vinyl and
Mhm.
iron on vinyl and things like that. So to me, that just has a whole different place in crafting than
Yeah.
the manual cutting machines. But now if I'm working with paper, majority of the time, I use the manual die cut machines. And if it's small enough to do in my little Tim Holtz sidekick, that's what I'm using.
Yeah.
You know what I just wondered? I wonder if you could run vinyl through your Big Shot or your manual die cutter.
I think you can. I was thinking about that when I was writing notes for this. I was like, hey, I wonder if you could put vinyl in your Big Shot. I
I've
think you
never
can.
thought of that before.
You can, but I'm going to tell you the issue there is going to be the Cricut and the Silhouette know how to pressure cut it so that it's not cutting through the backing and your
Yes.
vinyl.
Mhm.
And like with the heat press, that's even more important than the stick on vinyl because
Yeah.
you need it to just
Oh,
cut
yes. Mhm.
where you can weed it out and then use the backing piece or whatever you're going to use to transfer it to your fabric. If you have to pull that off of everything and put it on your sticky,
Yeah.
it's going to be a nightmare. I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
that's
But
true.
if you were doing it to use vinyl, maybe just on a page, not necessarily for what it's meant to, like to put on a cup or a t-shirt or whatever,
Right.
but you just wanted like a shiny vinyl sticker
Mhm.
look to
Yeah.
put on your page, you could do that.
You
Yeah.
could. Yeah.
Yeah.
I might have to play around with that.
I think I'm with Lori on my manual one. I think is my go-to one
Yeah.
because when I'm working on something and I'm like, oh, I wish I had a heart or a butterfly for this, then I can just jump up. I have kind of like a little die cut station set up in
Mhm.
my art room, and I can just jump up and crank it out really fast. There's no way I could do that with the Silhouette. It's like,
Yeah.
it'd be like a half hour of trying to set it up and not say a bad word when it won't work.
Right.
My problem with I have a little station set up too, but there's almost always stuff piled on top of
Right.
it. It's
Yep.
terrible.
Mhm.
Oh.
Well, everything else in my room is covered in stuff right now, but for some reason I'm able to keep the die cut area clean. I think because it's on a really thin table against the window. It's like a stand-up area.
Mhm.
It's not like a table. It's like these 2 cabinets that I put a shelf across.
Mhm.
So there's really no room for anything else.
Gotcha.
So that's probably my secret because everything else is covered, but that area for some reason stays uncovered. But yeah, I do use my Silhouette for stuff, but like we were saying, it just takes a lot more time to pull
Yeah.
it out. I think it depends so much on what you love to do the most. If you love card making and scrapbooking, you're probably going to like the manual machine better. But if you like using vinyl and doing t-shirts and cups
Mhm.
and that kind of thing, then you'll probably like the Silhouette better. Or if you're really into designing your own designs, you're
Yes.
going to like a Silhouette or a Cricut better. I've heard the Cricut's design area isn't as good as the Silhouette one, but I don't know because I don't have one.
I've heard the same. I've heard that the Silhouette is a much steeper learning curve, but once you get it, it's much more powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still true because I haven't used the Cricut software either.
Yeah. Well, I'm learning Illustrator right now, and it's actually been a lot easier than I thought it was going to be because I know how to use the Silhouette. The Silhouette
Oh.
software is really similar to Illustrator
Interesting.
in a lot of ways. So it is definitely a learning curve, but once you start to figure it out, it's really fun to be able to combine different dies, shapes, and make
Yeah.
your own
Yeah.
design. That part is really fun.
The other thing I've found with the manual versus the Silhouette or the Cricut is you have a lot more control over what size you cut. There's a lot more files readily available, I think, because
Yeah.
lots of people online sell a file that you can import into your Silhouette or Cricut and cut.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and they're cheaper. They're like $1, somewhere between $1 and $3, depending on the design. whereas a Sizzix die is like $20.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes a lot more than that, sometimes $40 or $50 depending on what it is. So that is a really cool thing, and a good thing to point out is that once you get the machine, you can have a lot more designs for a lot less.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I'll say too, you can even make things such as like a stencil with
Yeah.
your Cricut or
Yes.
Silhouette, which requires a lot more cutting and a lot of different patterns. So yeah, you can do more design wise with those than with
Definitely.
your
Yeah.
manual.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing that you can do with manual that you can't really do with the digital ones is embossing, which I really love. They make these little embossing folders. You run those through instead of the die.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing that and just doing sheets of paper and putting those in my junk journals. And I
Mhm.
love the texture of that. If you do emboss inked paper, especially if it's that shimmery ink, it gives it a really pretty look in your journals.
Yes.
So I love doing that. And I just discovered this. I haven't tried it yet, but I just discovered that if you buy a special mat for embossing, it's kind of like a rubber mat. You use a regular plate and then you put your die cut and then you put this rubber mat on the top. And instead of cutting it, it embosses the paper. It doesn't cut it.
Really?
So that turns all of your dies into embossing folders, essentially.
Yeah.
So I'm so excited to try that, but I have to get the mat because I don't have it.
I'm going to need to see a tutorial video on that to understand that a little more, because that's just not working in my head.
Well, and I'm wondering if I have if I have that mat, because
I bet you do.
I think I've either looked at it before and considered buying it and just kind of forgot about it, or I might have one
No.
sitting in my drawer at home and I don't know it, so I'm gonna have to look.
Yeah, you'll have to look online and look for embossing mat for die
Okay.
cut machine, but it just looks like a piece of rubber the same shape as the mat. I think the reason it works is that usually you have a hard mat on the bottom, your die, your paper, and then a hard mat on the top. And
Mhm.
so you're replacing that hard mat with something soft so the blade
Doesn't
can't
cut
cut.
through,
It
yeah.
doesn't have anything to press the blade
Hmm.
into. So that's why I think it works. But I really, to be honest, I have no idea because I haven't tried
Really
it
neat.
yet.
That's neat. I've got to check that out now.
Yeah, so I'm so excited to try that.
Does the soft rubber mat go under, like on the cutting part of the die?
I
Or does
think
it go on
so,
top?
but to be honest, since I haven't tried it, I'm not sure. I
Oh,
was
you
going to
haven't
look.
tried it yet either. I
No, I
missed
have to
that
look
part.
at the tutorial
Okay,
once I get the mat, but I don't have the special mat that you need. So
gotcha. Well, Amazon has it. It's only like $12.99.
Lori's over there Amazoning while we're talking.
And she wonders why you put that with her picture.
Yeah, exactly.
She literally is just putting stuff in her
She's
shopping
shopping
cart
while
while
we're
we're
doing a
talking.
podcast.
Oh my gosh, that may or may not be true. I'm not going to say.
Honesty is the best policy. I was going to say, with the embossing folders, I never cared anything about them. They really
Mhm.
almost irked me a little bit. I don't know why. I'm weird. You know how certain words just kind of get under your skin? Embossing
Yeah.
folders kind of did that to me until recently, when I learned to use the embossing glaze by Tim Holtz.
Mm.
And
Oh.
using that with a distressed crayon with an embossing folder, like an embossed image, is just dynamite. It changes
hold
the whole
on.
dynamic.
I have to Google Tim Holtz embossing color. What'd you say?
You
crayons.
have
Crayons.
this.
No, the crayons. I need the crayons. That's what I need.
Distressed crayons.
Yeah, the distress crayons.
I was going to say, now I know you have the embossing glaze because we have
Yes,
checked
I
back
do.
and forth on this.
Okay,
I
so
do.
you're gonna have to do a video tutorial
Okay.
on that, Jess, on
Mhm.
how
I
to
will, because
how
it
to
is
do that. That sounds amazing.
one of my favorite techniques now.
Because I've never tried his embossing glaze either.
Oh,
They are pretty cool, but I don't know what to do with them.
they are dynamite. After you play with it a little bit, it takes things to a whole nother level.
That sounds fun. I want to
It
try
does.
that.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so then the one final thing that I wanted to talk about, I don't want to name the names of the websites because I don't want to give them any publicity, but there are websites where you can buy basically knockoff dies of American companies for pennies on the dollar. So maybe the die costs $20 and you can get it for literally like $2 or
Yeah.
$3. And I think that a lot of people don't really understand the whole dynamic of how that works. But basically, what I would say, as a believer, as your crafty friend, please do not buy from those sites. Because what happens is they will buy a dye from an American company and they will make an impression of it. They're not even making the actual dye, they're copying it. Sometimes they won't even buy the dye. They'll take a picture of it from the internet and use that as a copy. So, first of all, you're getting a very inferior quality product when you buy that. Second of all, they're stealing it from the designer. And I know that a lot of people are like, well, why can they sell it for $2 and the designer's ripping us off selling it for $20? But what you don't understand is that designer, that company that is paying that designer, then they're paying advertising fees. They're paying American companies many times to do part of the manufacturing, which we pay Americans a lot more than they do overseas. And there's just so many fees. There's insurance. There's all kinds of overhead that someone who steals the design doesn't have. They don't have to pay any of that. So they can afford, it's the same as if you bought a watch off a guy in an alley. You can probably get a Rolex watch for him for a lot less than you're going to pay at the mall. Because he doesn't have any overhead, and also he's a thief and he might kill you. So,
but and also it's probably not a real Rolex either.
And it's not. It's that. At best, it's going to be inferior quality.
Right.
And that's what we're working with here. We're talking about people that have no integrity. They're thieves. They're liars. They absolutely don't care about other people. Particularly, they don't care about artists. And so when you buy from them, you're supporting a lot of really, really bad things. And so I would just say, I kind of have a feeling none of our listeners probably do that on purpose, but they might not know.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to share that as a designer. I don't design dyes right now, but who knows, I might someday. But just as a person who's an artist that makes my living from my art, speaking for other artists, please don't support that thievery.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, I have bought from them before, and it's very hard to tell if you're buying something that's stolen, because I don't know all of the dyes that are out there. You know what I mean?
Right.
But there are some that are knockoffs. I kind of just assumed, though, that they had maybe, I don't know, is it cut
like
them,
license
print them?
It?
Yeah, well, or that they had made them for this big company and then also made some for themselves, kind of thing.
Right.
I wonder if it's more like you said, they're just basically copying, purchasing one and copying it or something. I hadn't thought about that before.
If they're selling it for not just like 20% off, if they're selling it a $20 dye for $3, I can guarantee you that they've stolen it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you can't afford to do that. If you've made the dye yourself and you've paid the artist, you can't afford to sell it for $3.
Yeah.
There's too much overhead.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure that other people have done that too. So I want to say I'm not condemning anyone for doing that. I'm just wanting to say, if you didn't realize that, I wanted you to be informed that that is what's happening. And if you buy from a reputable company, from a known store that's based in America, it's typically overseas companies that are doing this. Most American companies are not going to do that. They're not going to steal from an artist and then put it on their company. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but for the most part, that's not happening. So if you go to a company where the shipping is from an overseas place like that, and you combine that with the low price, then I don't want to say every time, but 90% of the time, that's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my little controversial statement about about dyes.
That does explain a lot, though, because I went through a period of time where I bought a ton of dyes online, and because I had started with, I guess everyone started with nothing, but I jumped right into crafting and wanted all the things all at once. I'm sure that's shocking to all of you.
No,
but there are a lot of companies that they have design teams and their prices are higher. And I kept thinking their prices are higher because now they're just giving away stuff to design teams. And I kind of had a little bit of an issue with that. I don't know really what I'm trying to, I don't know. I felt
wanted a better price.
Well, I wanted a better price, and I didn't think having a design team who's going to help you sell more was a good reason to increase that price. But I'm wondering if that's not at all what they're doing, but they're actually paying designers and because I do think there are some reputable companies overseas. I think they design their own dyes. I think it's
Yeah.
not the majority, but I do think there are a few.
Yeah, I'm not saying if they're original dyes that you shouldn't purchase from them.
Sure.
What I'm saying is if you see this dye that you love and it's $20 or $30 and then you find it on ripoff.com for
Yes.
$3
Yep,
and
exactly.
you're like, yay. What you have to picture is that you've just stolen $10 from the lady sitting in her house with her kids running around trying to become an artist.
Mhm.
You just stole that from her because
Yeah.
that's who's getting ripped off. Moms like me who are artists who are struggling to create a business, that is who's getting ripped off. Obviously, that's part of their budget is paying their creative team for big companies that pay their creative team, not like you sweet volunteers.
Hey, we get paid in product.
You get paid in product.
That's right.
That is part of their budget, but
Sure.
it's a very fractional part of their budget. There's just so many other things that a company has to pay for that I think if you don't own a business, it's hard to imagine
Yeah.
all the things that a company has to pay for and all the times that a company actually loses money on a product because they don't want to overcharge their customer. And then something happens where they have to put a lot of money out that they weren't expecting. There's a lot of things that go into, which I didn't understand either until I started running a company. And you just cannot believe how many things you have to pay for that you didn't realize that you were going to have to pay for when
Right.
you have a
Oh,
company.
yeah.
And I'm just a little small, tiny company. I'm sure that big companies like Sizzix and American Crafts, they probably have things that I've never even dreamed of to pay for. But
Right. But that's true because when you were talking about all of the different things that companies pay for, several of those, I was like, didn't really know that. Didn't think about that,
Yeah.
yeah,
because I don't have a business. And so I don't think that way.
yeah.
That's a good
And I
point.
think that's true of most people.
Yeah.
You know, I remember before I started doing business stuff, when I found out that retail markup was 50%, a store would pay 50% of what I pay, and then they would mark it up 50%. I thought that was a total ripoff. And then I started working for a small store and I saw all the things that they had to pay for. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, so you're not making, you're making like $1 on this. And she's like, yep.
Wow.
So there's a lot that goes into it that I think a lot of people don't realize. But
Yeah.
so okay, that was my little rant. Sorry, everyone. Especially sorry if you don't buy those and you're like,
Or
okay,
if you do and you feel guilty about it now, it's okay.
yeah,
Terrible.
it's okay.
I'll repent.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to feel bad if they've already bought them. I just wanted to share because I thought there may be people that don't realize and would be horrified if they knew that they were
Absolutely.
doing that.
Yes, I totally
Different
agree.
perspective.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk about some fun techniques that you can do with die cuts. And I'm going to give a couple of my ideas. And then if you guys have ideas, you can jump in. One thing that I love to do is fold your cardstock in half, or you can even accordion fold it. It gets a little trickier if you've got folds on both sides. But if you just fold it in half and you lay your die on top of it and you just lay your die just slightly over so that it's not going to cut the fold, and you run it through, then you instantly make a little tip in or a booklet
Yes.
cover or
Love that.
page wrap, if you want to call it that. So that's really fun to do. It's basically you're just doubling it up and you just don't cut that fold.
Yeah. You can do that
and-
with punches too. I've done
Yes.
that before, but I don't think I've ever done it with a die. That's a great idea.
I know. I
Yeah.
love that.
And then the other thing about that is you can make dies longer that way too. Like I have this one that kind of looks like an index card. And so instead of folding it in half side to side, I took a long piece of paper and folded it up and then just cut the top part. And then when you take it out, it makes this really long index card.
Oh, cool.
Ah, that's really cool.
Yeah, so that's a fun way to play with it. And then another fun thing to do is to stack multiple die cuts to make a thicker and give it a lot of dimension. So, you know,
Yes.
if you have like a heart and you just cut about 20 of them out and then glue them together, then it makes this really thick. It almost looks like a chipboard heart.
Mhm.
Oh.
You could go the lazy man's way though and just put a little piece of foam in there.
Yes.
That's what I would be more likely to do. I would not be more likely to cut out 20 of something.
Well, that works with
Yeah.
simple shapes, but when you have a really complex shape,
Yes, you're right.
that's like intricate, like with lots of swirls and stuff, that's where it looks really cool. And you're right. You could do foam, but it would be really hard when it's really thin and
Yes.
intricate like that.
Yeah, I totally agree.
The other thing I said is cut 20 of them out. You can also stack paper up and cut more than one at a time. But again, when it's really intricate, the thicker your stack of paper is, the harder it is to get a good cut on it.
Yeah.
Clear embossing, not embossing like embossing folders, but heat embossed, doing just a clear glaze emboss, which maybe that's the same thing as what you're talking about,
It
Jess.
kind of is, but this would have color.
Yeah, this is like using a Versamark stamp on your die and then dipping it in clear embossing powder and then embossing it. It almost makes it look like acrylic.
Yes.
So that's a really
the
neat...
whole image, the whole die cut.
Yeah, the whole die.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was having a hard time getting my mind around that. That's a great idea.
That's when you might need the embossing dabber. The distress embossing dabber is wonderful because you can use the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then another fun thing is you can buy sheets of adhesive, like sticky sheets that are double-sided. So you take one side of the label off and stick it to some cardstock, and then you run it through your die cutter. And then you take the other side of the sticky label off, and now you've got a die cut sticker, basically. So you can just stick it down, or you can sprinkle glitter over the adhesive side, and then you can make like a glittered die cut. That's a really fun way to, especially again on the intricate dies that would be really hard to do with wet glue. That's a really fun way to do that.
Yeah.
That's a neat idea. I like that.
Well, and along the lines with that, I love to cut out of glitter paper. Some of them are thick, though. I love the real chunky glitter, like you can get at Hobby Lobby, the paper sheets that have that chunky glitter, but they're very hard to cut through your die cut machine. So that's a little bit difficult, but I love the look of that.
Yeah, I do too. I love glitter paper. So that was actually going to be one of my next things.
Sorry.
No. I'm glad you brought it up. So it's a good transition. Is different kinds of paper. What are some of the coolest things that you've die cut before? One thing that I love to die cut is transparencies, because they look really cool, all clear, and you can paint them either before or after you cut them, and then you get this really neat shape. And if you do the thing where you don't cut the fold, you can make it like a page wrap and stick it in your book like that.
Oh, yeah, that is cool.
I love that.
What about y'all? Any specialty paper that you particularly like?
Well, I'm going to rebel against Lauri and say glitter paper.
What do you mean rebel?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Because she just said that it was difficult to cut in a die cut machine.
Only some of it. The regular tiny little glitter, like most of the paper that you'll find is pretty easy, but some of them, like Hobby Lobby's got that super chunky glitter, which is so pretty, but it's hard.
But it's almost impossible to cut, because I did try and do that. But I've actually used those for school stuff, and I cut out some really big hearts for my wall outside my classroom this year for Valentine's with the glitter paper. I actually cut some small ones out to use in journaling while I was cutting, because I didn't want to waste my paper.
Hey, you made those awesome little lanterns last year too, or the little houses for Christmas.
Yes, I forgot
and they were so fun.
Those are my favorites, the glitter houses. So on Cricut, they have these house designs that you can buy and cut out, and then you put it together, put your little house together, and you put a tea light in it. And it lights up because it's got windows. So I used glitter paper and vellum, and I cut the house itself out of glitter paper, and then I cut the windows out of vellum. So some of my windows were kind of iridescent, some were stained glass, and then I had tea lights that went in them, and I had the neatest tea lights that they would stay on for 8 hours and then they'd be off. So they'd come on at like 5 o'clock every day, and then they would shut off, however long after, and then they'd come back on the same time the next day. So you didn't have to turn them on and off every day.
That's cool.
Oh, that's neat.
Really awesome.
But the houses were neat, and I did. I cut all those out of glitter paper.
Yep.
Wow. You have to put a picture somewhere for us to see those. Do you have it on your Instagram?
I do, because I used those a lot at Christmas in pictures, but I'll try and repost one.
Okay.
And then I've cut out fabric with a die before.
Yeah, I love doing fabric.
Yeah, I do too.
And we actually talked about that a little bit. I think it was it last week? We talked about using freezer paper to stiffen your fabric. So you iron the fabric onto freezer paper, and that makes it a little easier to cut in your die cut machine.
Yes. I know we talked last week about gluing it onto cardstock or taping it onto cardstock. And I have done the same thing with fabric and done it through a die cut.
And that's so fun to do. And they actually have, my mom has a quilting die cut machine. I think it's AccuQuilt.
Oh.
Is that right?
Oh,
And all of her dies, like she doesn't use it for paper crafting. It cuts quilt shapes so that she makes quilts with them.
How cool.
I
Yeah.
was wondering about that.
That seems like that would make it a lot
Easier.
easier.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness, yeah.
if you can just cut those out. So book pages is another one. I love the way book pages look cut out, die cut out. An
Yes.
unusual one that I've done before is sandpaper.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah, I've cut
Okay,
sandpaper
explain why.
yeah.
because it just looks
Texture.
cool.
Mhm.
Texture, yeah. And you can paint it, and it has like this just bumpy, cool looking texture. I don't know
Neat.
because I'm weird.
That's okay. We love you, Weird.
I think I've die cut out tissue paper before.
Ooh.
Oh, tissue paper. And did you have to back it with anything, or did you just put?
I think I just
big
folded
stack
it
of it?
up. Yeah, I just folded it up into a decent sized stack, and you
Yeah,
just kind of have to fiddle with it a little bit to see kind of how many layers is just right.
yeah. Deli paper
Yep.
is really cool too, and felt
Yes.
shapes. You can do all kinds of neat felt shapes, and foam, like the fun
Yes.
foam that you
Mhm.
get at the craft store. And the cool thing about that's another way to give dimension to a die if it's very intricate, is to cut the paper and a piece of foam at the same time.
Mhm.
And then instead of cutting 20 pieces of paper and stacking them up, you just put your paper on top of the foam
Yeah.
Right.
that you cut out.
Yep.
And then you get a neat dimensional look. So what else?
I have a tip when you're embossing. Are we to tips
Okay.
yet?
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do some tips.
So if you are having problems with your paper tearing, or you're using like a thick
Mhm.
cardstock or a watercolor paper that you're cutting out with, if you spritz it with water before you put it in your embossing folder or the embossing die, like the new impresslets,
Mhm.
Mhm.
then it will not tear when you put it through
Really?
your machine.
Mm,
Yes.
That is a good tip.
That is a good tip because I have some. I bought several Tim Holtz folders and I put regular cardstock in there, and I was like, well, they're kind of, I mean, it almost die
Yeah.
cuts some parts of it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's amazing. I like that.
It just allows that paper to stretch over the image and not
Yeah.
tear.
That is such a great tip. I love that.
Yes, that is a great one.
Okay, I have a tip for wax paper
Mhm.
for dies that are really intricate, that they get stuck in the die sometimes.
Yeah.
And they're hard to get out. If you put a layer of wax paper between the die and your paper, it's thin enough that it doesn't interfere with it cutting it. Although you might have to put a shim in. If you don't know what a shim is, basically that's just like a little thin piece of cardboard or paper just to press it
Bulk
down
it up a little.
harder,
Yeah.
increase the pressure. But if you put that wax paper between your paper and your die, then it won't stick in your die.
Ah.
So that's really handy for the really intricate ones that have little thin pieces that tend to stick.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Can we talk about die pet peeves now?
Okay, one more. I have one more tip.
Okay,
I think we'll do pet peeves. One more tip is for, you know how your cutting plates, how they start to get chunked up and like scratches and
Yes.
dings and
Yes.
everything. And then what happens is they will actually impress that on your paper.
Yep.
So you cut out this pretty hard, and then right in the middle there's like all these little scratch marks from your plate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can just put a piece of any paper, thin is better, like printer paper, lay that on your plate first, and then lay your paper. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Lay that
That's a great
between
idea.
the plate and the paper that you're cutting,
Yeah.
and run it through. And then it puts that imprint on the printer paper and not on your actual project.
Oh, that's good. I like
You
that.
know what else you can do is I try to use the same plate on the cutting surface of my die every time so that my top plate doesn't have that.
Yes.
So
I
then
just saw a video where she talked about that. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, that's so smart.
Yeah.
Why didn't I ever think of doing that?
Well, the paper's a great idea too. I hadn't thought about that. But then once that cutting plate gets used up, then I'll just I'll use the top one as the bottom and get a new one for the top.
Yeah, that is a
That's
great idea.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you, I have seen this new product. I don't know if y'all have seen this from scrapbook.com. It's called Magic Mat. Have you
Yeah,
seen
I've
this?
heard of it.
Now, I
Mhm.
haven't tried it, but they're saying that their mat, it doesn't warp and it doesn't get scratched up and all that stuff. So I have not personally tried it, but I really want to, because if that's true, that would be so awesome.
You know what? I think that we need, for the sake of the show, we should probably all order one and try it out. Don't you think?
I feel like we need to. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a responsibility to our listeners.
Yes, exactly. I think you're right.
Oh, my word.
Okay, let's hear your pet peeve, Lauri.
Okay. Can I just tell you that I cannot stand when a die has lots of little intricate pieces. So like to put all together in different colors or shapes, I guess always
Yeah.
shapes, but whatever. But it's just one die. So
Yeah.
I have to cut out my little die that I want to cut out in 42 different colors. I'll have to cut them all out in 42 different colors. That drives me nuts.
Yes.
Absolutely
Yes.
crazy. Please stop doing that.
You're not alone in that.
Yeah. I a lot of times won't even buy ones like that because I'm just like, I'm not doing that.
I will not anymore. I didn't realize when I was first buying, I didn't really think it through.
Me either. I bought several like that because you don't realize it. They show you the sample and you're just like, oh, that's so cute.
Yes.
And then you get it home and you're like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree. Please stop doing that, companies.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, what about storage? Do you guys have any storage tips on how you store your dyes? One thing that I just started doing that I love is I put a magnetic sheet in a picture frame and put that on my little die cut station. You know how when some of the dyes, you get them out and they're so tiny and thin that they get lost in all the paper and stuff that you're working with. So I just put all the dyes that I'm working with on that magnetic sheet, and it holds them while I'm cutting. And then when I'm done with that one, I put it back on the sheet. You know, it's kind of like my staging area for them, so they don't get lost in the mess on my table.
That's a great idea.
And
kind of similar to that, I store my dyes on some magnet paper, like sheets, like 8.5 by 11. And I just cut them down to whatever size I needed. I don't know what it was, 4 by 6 maybe. I haven't been in there in a while. And then I just kind of store everything. I slide it into a little poly pocket kind of thing. I'll have to get you a link, but yeah, I'll put a link on the show notes, but it works really well. And I just kind of stick a label on there saying where it's from or who makes it or whatever, so that if I need to find it again.
Yeah, I need to do that because right now I'm just using the package that they come in, but that's really inconvenient.
Yes.
Mine are just stuck in a box under my desk.
Oh my, we're going to have to do something about that.
I know.
Oh, when we talked about storing digital products that you've printed, I said that I had a wide file cabinet, and that's the bottom drawer, and the top drawer is full of dyes. So I've got, I think, baskets from Dollar Tree in there, and just stand them up, and there they are.
That's a great idea.
She has a lot of dyes.
I do. It's obnoxious. Like I said, I went through the phase where I had to have all the dyes of everything. It was ridiculous.
That's so weird. I can't imagine you doing that, Lauri.
I know, it's shocking.
Not at all.
Okay, one more thing I wanted to talk about was adhesive. Now, I already talked about using the whole full sheet adhesive and then sticking it to your cardstock and running it through, but what other adhesives do you guys use? Jess, you said you got some new adhesive?
Okay, I was trying to be polite, but I'll go. I got sorry, Art Glitter Glue, and I love it. Like,
it's the best. Yeah.
Love it. And I got a pack of the little needle nose bottles from Hobby Lobby. So I put some of the glue in that so that I wouldn't have one bottle of glue that I leave open somewhere and I lose the whole bottle. And y'all, I love it so much. It's the best glue I've ever used.
Yeah, I love our glitter glue too.
It really is great glue.
So the needle tip, is that is that the name?
Needle, it's like a needle nose bottle.
What section do you find them in?
In the fine art section.
Okay.
With the paints and brushes and stuff. There's a whole little section of supplies, paint trays, and the palette knife.
Oh, interesting. Okay, yeah.
And there's also some bottle packages that you can get over there, and they're the needle nose bottles. And that makes it easy to do intricate dyes. Like, you can use that little needle nose on the really teeny tiny little pieces and fit there easily.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, that is a really good idea. And then the other adhesive I've seen some people use is spray adhesive, where you lay it in a box. And that, if you're a person that doesn't have patience for needle nose adhesive, that could work for you. I personally don't love spray adhesive because it seems like no matter what you do, it gets all over everything.
Everywhere. I
I
use
don't
that in
use
my
it either.
classroom.
Oh
But
gosh.
if you're impatient, it can be a handy
Yes.
Yeah.
tool for certain dyes.
I tend to use a lot of foam tape, foam dots or whatever on
yeah.
the backs of my dyes. I like a lot of dimension in some of my stuff. And so I use a lot of that.
Yeah, foam tape is a really good one too, depending
Mhm.
on the size of the die and
Right.
shape and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought about another tip that we didn't mention, and this is something that I just learned, so others might need to know it. But when you're using multiple dyes together, like if you're wanting to keep them on a sheet of paper, or if you're trying to make like a shaker and you need your dyes to stay
Nested.
yes,
Yep.
using a little piece of washi tape on the top will
Yep.
keep them from
Mm.
moving. I was trying to be all smart and would use like double-sided tape on my plate with the dyes, and that
Oh
was just too
gosh.
much. Yeah,
Yeah.
because my
Yeah.
brain never went to the washi tape. So when I
Yeah.
saw that recently, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's genius.
Yeah.
Why didn't I
Yeah.
think of that?" So I'm going to pass that along here.
Nice.
Good one. I think Lauri told me this to take some of the sticky off of it
Yes.
first so you don't tear your paper. I don't know if
Yes.
you've ever done that, Jess,
Yeah.
but I do
You can stick it to your
routinely.
pants, stick it to your jeans, or stick it to
Yeah.
your shirt or
Yeah.
something just to get a little something off of there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have no comment about nesting dyes because I'm nesting dye challenged. so-
I remember that. I think it was a pumpkin, if I recall correctly.
Pumpkin.
Yes.
We all had to have the pumpkin. That pumpkin was fantastic.
I know.
So, okay, well, are we ready for fun finds?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll go.
Okay.
My fun find today is actually a website, and it's myscrapchick.com. She has a ton of SVG files that you can cut with your Cricut or your Silhouette, and she's got just the neatest products, lots of dimensional products if that's what you like, lots of card stuff, just all kinds of fun stuff in there.
Ah,
It's a great website.
Neat.
And she's almost always got a sale going on. It's nice. It's really good.
yay.
Yeah.
I love new places to shop.
I know.
I know.
Can't imagine.
Okay, Jess, what about you?
So my fun find today is going to be the Impresslets by Sizzix. My very favorite one is the floral frame from Tim Holtz. And I love making them. And then I love using the embossing glaze and distressed crayons on top of them because it is like a little picture frame in your journal. And I just
It's
love
cute.
it so much because they are embossed and it cuts it at the same time. So you get this 3D effect with a die cut.
That's really cool.
They look so cool. I haven't tried them yet, but I'm going to totally buy whichever one you recommend because I really want to play with
The floral frame, the floral frame is my favorite.
Okay, I'm definitely going to have to add that to my list because I've been wanting to try them forever. But you know how when it's a new thing, a new product, you don't know which one to pick?
Right.
Yep.
Sometimes I just get them all.
Yes. Understand that.
As you know
Oh,
from my
my.
Distress Oxide order.
Yeah. Mhm.
Y'all, I just ordered a bunch of Distress Oxide colors and then I sent them a picture of my order and they were both like, what? You ordered them all.
Oh my gosh.
So, okay, well, let's talk about our challenge. Oh, wait, we want to talk about giveaway winners. We realized that we haven't been announcing the giveaway winners. In case you don't know, we have a challenge every week, which we're going to tell you what our challenge is this week, for you to create something in your inspiration journal, which is just a journal that we made at the beginning of the show just to put our challenges in. So it can be anything that you have. And if you post a picture on Instagram of your challenge and you use the hashtag Creative Faith and Friends, we are looking for people to give prizes to that are using our hashtag and participating in the challenge.
Yes.
So you do need to post a picture of the challenge. It can't just be like a picture of your cat or whatever. You have to post a picture of the challenge that you participated in. And then we are going to draw prizes. We've been drawing prizes. We've got prizes to mail out even right now as we speak. And we're going to be giving away things that we've made, gift certificates to pinkpaperpeppermints.com, and all kinds of fun stuff. So we would love for you to participate in the challenges and use our hashtag. And we are going to start announcing the winners because we forgot here on the show. So the first winner that we're going to announce is Planners and Pen Pals. Is that right,
Yes.
Jess? At Planners and Pen Pals on Instagram. So if that is you, we will be contacting you to get your prize to you.
Congratulations. I feel like we should be having bells going off or something.
We need like an applause. I need to find some sound effects.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
I may have an applause button somewhere. I'll have to look for it.
Oh, that would be so fun. So we got a prize for you. And if you would like to get a prize, just participate in our challenge. And the challenge this week is going to be to use a die cut or embossing. If you don't have a die cut machine and you want to use a punch, that's similar. It's just a smaller die cut.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can emboss something if you want to use embossing, or combine embossing and die cutting. You can use one of the ideas we shared, or you can make up your own idea. And you just need to somehow use a shape of some kind and show us your picture on Instagram of what you created and use the hashtag Creative Faith and Friends, and you might win a prize.
Yes.
Yay.
What's our word for the week?
I know what it is.
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
Our word for the week is hope. HOPE. We always have hope in Jesus.
Yes. Hope in Jesus. I love that. Okay, so thank you guys so much for joining us. Before we go, we do want to share with you where you can find us online. So, Lauri, where can we find you?
I am on Instagram and YouTube as Measure Once, Cut Twice, with periods in between the words.
And Jess?
I am on Instagram and YouTube at Just Give Me Jesus, and on Etsy at Choose Joy in Jesus.
And you can find me at pinkpaperpeppermints.com, and I'm at pinkpaperpeppermints on Instagram and YouTube. So I would love to see you there. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye, y'all.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our conversation about all things die cutting today. We would love to hear what your favorite machine is, and if you have any fun techniques to share. Also, what are your thoughts on our discussion about overseas companies stealing products from American designers? We want to hear from you even if you disagree with us. Leave us your comments and questions on the blog show notes at pinkpaperpeppermints.com/011. You'll also find all the links we talked about on today's show there in the show notes. And if you have a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts so that other creative friends can find us, we would be so appreciative of that. I'm Melissa Ohlson, and I hope you have a week filled with peace and grace, and we will see you next time on Creative Faith and Friends.